100 years ago today, a little girl was born in a townhouse in Mayfair. Nobody yet knew that she would become the longest reigning monarch in British history, serve 15 prime ministers, and carry an entire nation through war, scandal, loss, and renewal with a quiet dignity the modern world has almost forgotten how to recognize. But if you want to understand exactly what Elizabeth meant to her family, you don't need a history book. You just need to look at the photographs they released today. Welcome back, my Royal Rogues. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue, and today, the 21st of April, 2026, would have been Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday. Today, we are honoring a woman who gave her entire life to duty, and watching the family she built honor her with the kind of grace that only comes from genuinely meaning it. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was born on the 21st of April, 1926. She was not expected to be queen. She became queen by the accident of her uncle's abdication and the early death of her father. She served as sovereign for 70 years and 214 days, the longest reign in British history, and when she died in September 2022, it felt, even to people who had never met her, like losing a grandmother you somehow still belonged to. 100 years after her birth, the nation she served is still measuring its rulers, its public figures, and sometimes its own private choices against the standard that she set. And today her family gathered to mark that. Let's start with that photograph because there's so much happening in it. The king and queen at the center, Catherine, Princess of Wales, in a lilac coat, standing composed and quite literally in the foreground. William beside her, Princess Anne, Edward, and Sophie, Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, the Gloucesters, and seated on either side of the group, the two oldest members of the House of Windsor. The Duke of Kent on the left with his cane, and Princess Alexandra on the right, both well into their 80s. Now, notice something. Everybody showed up. The Duke of Kent is 89 years old. Princess Alexandra is 89 years old as well. They could have sent a card, but they came. Every single person in this photograph is here today because their mother, their grandmother, their aunt, their cousin, the central organizing figure of their entire lives, would have been 100 years old. And you can feel that in the room before anybody says a word. The body language here is quiet and contained and reverent. Just the firm, fully assembled, looking straight at the camera as if to say, she is still with us. That is exactly the effect she would have wanted. And the fact that the two seated elders, Kent and Alexandra, are placed as anchors on either side of this photograph is not an accident. It is a visual reminder that this family has living memory that stretches back to the 1930s. That matters. That is the institution she protected. So earlier in the day, the king and queen hosted a reception at Buckingham Palace. Now, any royal household could have marked this date with private mass and a wreath. Charles did something different. He invited representatives of his mother's former charities and patronages, the causes she quietly carried for decades without fanfare. And he invited centenarians, people born on the exact same day as the queen, ordinary men and women who are also turning 100 today and who are, in a very real sense, her exact contemporaries. But think about that choice for a moment. On the day you are remembering the most famous woman of the 20th century, you do not throw a glittering gala. You fill the room with people who were born the same week she was, and many of them in far humbler circumstances, and you thank them for being there. That is the Elizabeth lesson applied in real time. Duty and humility, meeting your people where they are. And Charles understood the assignment. And meanwhile, in Regent's Park, the Princess Royal did something even quieter. She opened the Queen Elizabeth II Garden, a living commemorative space full of wisteria arches and pathways that the public can walk through whenever they want. No ticket, no ceremony required, just a garden, bearing her mother's name, open to anyone who needs a moment of peace in central London. And if you know anything about the late Queen, you know this is exactly the kind of memorial she would have chosen for herself. Not a statue, not a monument, a working garden. Something alive, something that grows, something that gives back to the country long after the ribbon is cut. Anne understood that too, because Anne, more than any of her siblings, inherited the engine that drove her mother, which is the deep, unglamorous belief that the work itself is the point. But here's the tribute that quietly broke the internet today. William and Catherine posted a single photograph, a black and white portrait of a young Princess Elizabeth smiling in a double strand of pearls with the caption of just a few words. Remembering Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the 100th anniversary of her birth, inspiring generations through a lifetime of duty. Few words, no essay, no revelation, no monetized documentary. Inspiring generations through a lifetime of duty. That is the thesis, the statement of the entire British monarchy, delivered in one sentence by the couple who are going to carry it forward. And it landed because William and Catherine, of all people, understand what that inheritance actually costs. So today is about the people who showed up, all of them, from the king to the Duke of Kent with his cane, from Catherine in her lilac to Princess Alexandra in her blue shawl. They showed up the way she taught them to show up, quietly, properly, on time, and together. So what would she have made of it all? I suspect she would have looked at the photograph, smiled that very small private smile she used to do, the one where only the corner of her mouth moved, and then asked someone about the centenarians. She would have wanted to know their names. She would have wanted to know what they did during the war. And she would have been more interested in them than in herself. And that is who she was. And that is why we still miss her. And that is why, 100 years after she was born, the country she served is still quietly trying to be a little more like her. So happy birthday, Your Majesty, and thank you for the duty, for the service, for the 70 years on the throne, and for the example that none of us will see again in our lifetimes. And oh yeah, thank you for that awesome James Bond clip for the Olympics. That was awesome. So what is your favorite memory of the late Queen? Where were you when you heard the news back in 2022? And which of today's tributes moved you the most? Let me know in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. Much love and bliss.